seated. Professor Emeritus of the University of the West Indies, David Mago, ICHEME Technical Director for Qualifications and International Development, Mr. Neil Atkinson, Senior Ambassador ICHEME, Mr. Maurice Masaya, VP Corporate Operations Atlantic, Mrs. Tony Sirju Ramnarain, members of the APET Council and ICHEME Steering Committee, fellow engineers and students, and specially invited guests. A pleasant good evening to you all. I have the honor and privilege of being your MC for this historic event in launching the Trinidad and Tobago ICHEME member group. ICHEME is a global professional membership organization for chemical and process engineers. It is the only organization to award chartered chemical engineering status and the professional process safety engineer. Indeed, it has been a rainy day today, so I really thank you all for making that extra effort. For those of you who would have come from Port of Spain, Woolley Parsons, for those of you who would have been coming from Point Lisas and Point Fortin, and for those of you who are coming from the east. Indeed, it's a really, really pleasure to have you join us here today. To start our program, I'm going to invite Mr. Maurice Masaya. Maurice has a BSc in Chemical Engineering and an MSc in Production Engineering and Management from UE. He has about 30 years' experience in the energy sector, where he has held several managerial and leadership positions. He is presently one of the engineering managers at BPTT. In September 2014, he was selected as the chairman of the ICHEME Trinidad and Tobago member group, and in March 2015 was appointed as an ICHEME senior ambassador for Trinidad and Tobago. He is a fellow with ICHEME, a chartered engineer with the UK Council of Engineers, a registered engineer with the Board of Engineering of Trinidad and Tobago, and an associate member of APET, and also a project management professional. Maurice is also a member of the Industrial Liaison Committee of the University of the West Indies and a member of the Industrial Advisory Board of the University of Trinidad and Tobago. I now invite to give our opening remarks Mr. Maurice Masaya.
Thank you very much, Imtiaz. And good evening. Professor Emeritus of the University of the West Indies, David Mago, our featured speaker. Mr. Neil Atkinson, ICHEME Technical Director for Qualifications and International Development. Mrs. Caroline Sergio Ramnarain, Atlantic Vice President of Corporate Operations. Members of the ICHEME Steering Committee. Members of the APET Council, ICHEME members, representatives of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, representatives of the University of the West Indies, specially invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Like Imtiaz said, it is also quite an honor and a privilege for me to be able to stand here this evening to welcome you all to the official launch of the Institution of Chemical Engineers of Trinidad and the Trinidad and Tobago member group. So you'll hear me refer to it as the TTMG. So ICHEME and APET have been working quite closely over the last year to foster an affiliation for a closer working relationship. So presently we are finalizing the details of a memorandum of understanding between the two institutions, and this should be concluded shortly. So the MOU defines the benefits and conditions between the both organizations, and there are significant benefits for all engineers from student to retiree. But we need the support of you, the members here this evening, to move the TTMG along and to make it a huge success. Just a bit about the ICHEME. ICHEME was founded in 1922 as a professional institution for chemical engineers, chemical and process engineers, and has grown quite impressively to its current status of over 40,000 members across 120 countries. MT has mentioned it is the only organization globally to award the status of Chartered Chemical Engineer. And that status is seen as a gold standard in related areas of engineering across industry and academia. Today, the TTMG has on its register a total of 167 members. 28 of our members are chartered, and there are an additional 5 members who hold the highest status in the institution, that of fellow. Presently, though, there are only 5 student members on our register. So I'd like to make an appeal, a plea really, for individuals and corporations to support and sponsor our students. The contributions to sponsor our students will go a long way. As students members, they will be able to access ICHEME journals, research and development papers, of which there are thousands, online textbooks, mentors and coaches. And to me, that's the main reason for students choosing to join the ICHEME. And some of our major, I would say, experience lies right here in the room right now. Presently, there are over 660 chemical and process engineers in our undergraduate programs. So I'm just putting that in context. Out of that 660, only 5 are currently members. And they stand to benefit so much from sponsorship if they were to be able to join the organization. This evening, I am very pleased to announce that the UTT, the University of Trinidad and Tobago, has kindly agreed to host the TTMG and will be providing office space for us at the Point Lisa's campus, so that we can conduct the business of the member group. And this will assist us greatly in setting up the TTMG on firm footing so that we can provide better services for our members. On November 27th, which is just next month, we are planning a meeting to develop our 2016-2017 calendar of events. And we will be looking for full participation from you, the members here today. So be on the lookout for the notices from our websites and our email address. And once again, welcome to the official launch of the TTMG. Thank you for your attention. I'm looking forward to your participation as we continue on this journey towards building a strong and vibrant Trinidad and Tobago ICHEME member group. Thank you.
Thank you, Maurice. Permit me to introduce myself. I am Imtiaz Isahak, and I am also a member of APET. As a matter of fact, I'm your chemical division chair. And about APET, our second speaker is from APET, and he's our president-elect. I invite to bring greetings from APET, Engineer Fazir Khan.
ICHEME Senior Ambassador, Chairman Mr. Maurice Masaya, ICHEME Technical Director for Qualifications and International Development, Mr. Neil Atkinson, Professor Emeritus, UWI, David McGraw, Atlantic LNG VP, Corporate Operations, Ms. Ramnarine, ICHEME Steering Committee members, specially invited guests, ICHEME members, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. On behalf of the Association of Professional Engineers, I bring greetings and congratulations to the Trinidad and Tobago ICHEME member group for this initiative. The APET Council is confident that endeavors like this by the TTMG will not only serve our local engineers well and add value to the local engineering profession, but can also enhance the impact that we have in the international engineering arena. I wish to highlight that in his recent position as president of APET, Dr. Hayden Folong, front row, championed the formalizing of this mutually beneficial relationship of collaboration between APET and ICHEME. And as you all heard just now, the signing of the MOU is imminent. It may actually happen tonight. I can also note that our current chair of the APET Chemical Division, Mr. Imtiaz Isaac, is an active member of your newly formed steering committee, and you can count on his seemingly endless energy and unwavering commitment. We are most heartened to see that your steering committee also includes a young member group representative from the UTT. As we too at APET have been concentrating our efforts on encouraging participation at graduate level. So I want to echo the calls of Mr. Masaya for the participation of young members. We at APET therefore wish the Trinidad and Tobago ICHEME member group every success, and we pledge our support as we strive together to advance the status of the engineering profession in Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Fazir. We have a very special guest, who flew all the way from the UK. And he is the Director of Qualifications and International Development for ICHEME. And that is Engineer Neil Atkinson. Just a little bit about Neil. Neil has a chemical engineering degree from the Imperial College of Science and Technology, University of London. Before joining ICHEME, he spent 21 years with Procter & Gamble, working in many global business sectors. He has considerable experience in new product development and was responsible for product launches of global brands, such as the Hugo Boss fragrances and Olay cosmetic skincare businesses. In 2004, Neil joined ICHEME as Director of Qualifications and International Development. In this role, he leads all professional qualifications activities of the global institution. Most recently, he has led important initiatives in the field of process safety, including expansion of a competence framework for registration of professional engineers. In addition, Neil leads ICHEME's international development, having established ICHEME's offices all the way in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, and Wellington. He is engaged with developing the profession worldwide, leading ICHEME activities in India, the Middle East, and South Africa. Neil is a chartered engineer and a chartered scientist. He is a fellow of ICHEME and an honorary fellow of the Society for the Environment. I invite to address us Engineer Neil Atkinson.
Thank you very much. I'm always very short. There we are, that's better. Thank you very much. Good evening. Thank you for coming. Thank you for all the supporters of ICHEME thus far for our activities, or should I say your activities. So I'm delighted and most appreciative of all those colleagues from the APEC Council members, the steering committee that's managed to get us moving forward. Enormously grateful to UTT's support to ICHEME and their interest in ICHEME, and that's fantastic news about what they have offered us at Port Lisa, so thank you very much for that. Thank you to the sponsors of this evening. I think Wally Parsons have got something to do with that. Thank you very much.
as well as the BPs and the Atlantic LNGs, etc. So it's fantastic to have such support from right across this community. Thank you for the introduction. But this evening's all about you. This is your member group. It is not really about ICHEME. But I would like to take the opportunity to spend a little bit of time just describing what ICHEME has been up to and what its ambitions are as a professional organization. So I think it's captured by you as trustworthy professionals, right? I was down this afternoon at Port Lisas, and there's a lot of kit down there, some very exciting stuff. And my word is that got to be operated properly, skillfully, safely, etc., for not just the business, but for the communities around. So the community looks to you as chemical engineers to really be the flag bearers of quality, standards, ethics, behaviors, etc. So really this is what this is all about. People don't join ICHEME because they have to. They participate with ICHEME because they want to. There's no regulatory push that says you need to become a chartered chemical engineer or to join a body such as ours. But those who do support us tremendously. I mean, I should say that the ICHEME is you. I say that again, I stress that again. The ICHEME's staff membership around the world is less than 100 people, right? Supporting now something like 40,000 odd members. So the work, the passion, the skills, the delivery is all of you, right? It has nothing to do really with what we do at the center of this thing. Volunteering support, growing your profession is highly valued, and really tonight's all about encouragement. If I could leave this room tonight and say, move forwards and support Maurice and the steering committee, that'd be absolutely fantastic. Okay, thank you. Next slide. So yes, today we are the largest, I think, chemical engineering body in the world, or maybe first equal. There's another, of course, the American Institute of Chemical Engineers, similar size. What's unique about ICHEME is our qualifications activities, our ability to professionally qualify people as chartered chemical engineers, and indeed to look at the qualities and attributes of university programs, and indeed also the quality and attributes of professional training inside companies, which we also do. The number is interesting because when I joined ICHEME, the number was half that. 23,000 actually 10 years ago. That has nothing to do with me, far from it, but it gives you some indication, I think, of the pace of growth and interest in the organization. We were a UK body. We are still headquartered in the UK and very proud of that heritage, but actually you can see that growth will have not happened in the UK. That has happened internationally, very much so. And we've been, as already touched on, opening offices in various places where we've had great support. And our first adventure really was into Malaysia of late. But then an awful lot has been happening since then as we've grown our own confidence in our own ability to service the profession worldwide. So the reason I think that people are attractive to ICHEME primarily remains news about the profession, a broader perspective. I was recently with the chief engineer of Shell, who's been encouraging his organization to have broader perspectives and sees ICHEME as a vehicle to do that, very much so. And it's about professional qualification, because it really is your badge of quality should you wish to put yourself through this badging process, or qualifications process. And it's putting yourself up for peer review, right? So you have to be reasonably brave and confident to do that. So that's what we like to support. We are very engaged with supporting the pipeline from attracting kids into universities, supporting students. So yes, we want more than 5 here in Trinidad, please. That's a challenge for you. Go get them excited, get them interested. And we will support them with a package of resources that we have. And of course, once they graduate and either stay in academia or go more likely into vocational land or maybe regulators or whatever, then we are interested in supporting careers from that point forwards. And we've been undertaking a couple of initiatives of late. One is to engage with key companies who are, let's call it the real quality companies who invest in chemical engineering. We like those as an institution of chemical engineers. And we have this sort of recognition scheme called corporate partners, which is a recognition. There's no money involved. It is purely about quality of output to the profession from those organizations. So we have a few corporate partners who are in the golden category and quite a few others who are not yet, or maybe never will be. Equally, we have a concept called affiliate societies where we want to link in around the world to normally much smaller organizations or societies and try and add value collectively to the local organization and its members. And in a sense, that's one thing we are aspiring to do here by, 1 + 1 = more than 1, equals 3, 4. So that's what we hope to gain out of a relationship, a strong relationship, and enduring one, we hope, with APEN. So that's where we are today. Let me flip a gear and tell you a little bit about where we want to be in the future. Who thinks chemical engineering is important in this room? Not all of you, that's concerning. But most of you, that's good. I think you're pretty good, all of you, because you came this evening. So you must believe that chemical engineering is important, right? I think it is, too. It's pretty obvious it is, isn't it? So we are great at operating in systems challenges, and there are many of those in the world, and the planet is a system after all. So things like water, things like sustainable energy, things like getting enough food and nutrition to support a 9 billion population, dealing with increased healthcare demands as the population grows and ages. All these things are big, big, big issues that we need to wrestle with, and chemical engineering is right at the heart of those solutions to these challenges. And this is our descriptor of how that works. So if you think all this stuff really at the end of the day is about quality of life for an expanded population, then there are various chemical engineering components that support the development of success against that agenda. So if you look at the horizontals on that chart, we've got things like sustainability, process safety, education, training, research, multidisciplinary collaboration. We're not chemical engineers by ourselves, by the way. We're only going to solve this stuff if we interact with the chemists, the biologists, even the social scientists, and the behavioral people as well, for example, in human factors. And of course, the bio dimension will increasingly, I think, play a role in many of the solutions as we move forward. So most chemical engineers can plot their careers somewhere on these pathways, and will continue to do so. So that's the framework. And if we look at the next slide, please, you will see where we have to play as chemical engineers, where you have to play. I guess most of you who's in manufacturing? Nobody. Who's processing stuff on a day-to-day? Okay, a few of you. Okay, right, okay. Who's in education? A few of you. Okay. Who's in the regulators? Okay. Right, okay. So there's this whole, that's interesting in itself. There's a whole spectrum of destinations where chemical engineers work. And we're quite good, of course, at the technical bits. That's what we get trained to do. But to address the big challenges, we need to be far better than that. So technical excellence, of course, but actually we really need to be engaging with the policy agendas. We need to be engaging with the public and attitudes to things like risk. I was in Houston this week, where there's been an incident fairly recently in that community, and the society there does not understand risk. It understands hazard. It expects 100%, no hazard, please. There's a few hazards around me right now, and we need to be able to convey what risk is. And the only people to do that will be people like you. It's hugely important. And then, of course, the economic drivers play into all of this, don't they? Just as we have seen, no doubt, with the changes to the oil price of late and the impact that has had on all sorts of technology choices and investments, etc. So one way or another, chemical engineers need to be involved with all these attributes. I'll let these individuals come in. No, it's okay. Make yourself comfortable. Thank you. Next slide, please. So what is ICHEME doing for this framework? So it's quite easy to identify the big challenges. It's quite easy to articulate where us chemical engineers can make a difference. What ICHEME has done is try to create something which is a very forward-looking projection as to where the contributions will need to be from chemical engineers in these spaces. And we've created these what I call vistas in a document that's called Chemical Engineering Matters. If anybody has not heard of Chemical Engineering Matters, then go and take a look at it, please. It really is quite an interesting document, and it's written in a language that's very, very accessible to people. But it will take it takes a view as to what is happening now, what is going to be happening in the midterm, and what's happening on the horizon to address these big challenges that we all have. And they've been put together by you, right? So it's been put together by the members of ICHEME worldwide. And that's quite an interesting thing in itself, because, believe me, there's a tremendous diversity of opinion on some matters like these, depending where you sit in the world. Some dramatic differences. So we've tried to project a balance of view and balance of opinion in this work. Thank you. And we've taken it to everybody. I mean, I was recently in the Netherlands doing some work. We've done this in South Africa. We've done it in the UK. We've done it in Malaysia, Singapore. And this is on Jurong Island in Singapore, where they do all the stuff that you kind of do at Port Lisas and so on. Engaging with chemical engineers there about where can they individually align to making a contribution against these vistas. So I would recommend to Maurice and the steering committee here, then sometime next year, why don't you have a go at this and really think about how does chemical engineering matter here in Trinidad, and where do you play? It's really quite interesting. Next slide, please. So what is ICHEME doing today in this whole area? And this takes us a bit more practical into how we might be supporting you as individual engineers. So the world has changed, fortunately, and the world of technology is now such that we can actually have a much better relationship with our members wherever they are through the technology. So these are no longer remote things to members, right? So we are very busy right now producing webinars for people, which have been hugely successful over the past 2 or 3 years, with quite a large population of our community dialing in for free to these webinars, and there will be a topic that is of interest to you. I was just looking at some this morning, what's coming up in November. Go have a look, it's very interesting. Journals we produce as members of ICHEME. Actually, can I ask, who's a member of ICHEME? Are we all members of ICHEME? Good, we got some recruits. Very good. So excellent. So go have a look and go talk to your colleagues about ICHEME. We have our TCE, which is our news piece for the profession, which issues daily news for the profession as well as on a monthly basis. Quite well renowned, actually. People do seem to like that. We hear from our members and others. We have special interest groups. So there's oil and gas, for example, is a particular group that may be of interest to you, and there's lots of webinars and connectivity and so on. So have a look at that. Training, maybe we can just bring some training here to Trinidad. You run some specialist training, typically in the area of process safety, but not that alone. So that there may be opportunities to explore that if the demand is here in the community to do so, to make the economics work. Conferences we do, of course, again, process safety conferences, our hazard brand's important. Our work with students on campus is a campaign of activity that we have. We've launched something, the kind of atomic-looking thing on the top left, called the ICHEME Safety Centre, based in Melbourne, which is really doing some great work around the fields of competency at the moment. And again, that is something I would commend to the organisations and the people within the organisations. And of course the member groups. The member groups are what makes the thing live, the activities that you do. Not just technical, they can be completely social, and that's perfectly okay as well, and very acceptable. Okay, so these are the kind of things ICHEME are doing today. Moving on. Moving on again. And let me just talk about this one, because I do want to talk about process safety for this reason here, which is the next slide. This is what happens when it goes wrong, all right? If it goes wrong, there's tremendous physical loss. You can handle that because it's financial. There is tremendous environmental loss, which isn't very good, but you know, again, there's a price to be paid on cleanup. It's really not very good. There can be human loss, not just to the people who are sadly perhaps killed in this. 178 people were killed in Tianjin recently. 178 because there was a mix of, we don't know the cause yet, there's certainly a mix of fertilizer and cyanide in the same warehouse, right? I saw pictures of rivers full of dead fish associated with that disaster. But another 800 or so were injured. Right? So just think of the impact, right? We get this stuff wrong, it can go badly, badly wrong, to the extent that your company can be out of business. Your reputation is shot, and you can go out of business. That's Union Carbide down the bottom for the Bhopal disaster. So please, 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 everything you do, make sure you've got process safety at your heart. I'm sure you do, but this is the reason why you do it, right? It's absolutely critical. And that's the reason also why ICHEME responds to this area. So I put up the next slide. I'll just quote here some of the newer things that we've been doing over the past year or so. And to talk through these, if the top right, as you look at that, really relate to process safety. There's a guidance in the middle there, which is produced by the ICHEME Safety Center. It's about a competency framework for everybody in your organization, not just you, the chemical engineers, but it's the operators through to the HR manager, through to the shift supervisors, the engineers, all the way up to the board, right? So there's a role for everybody in an organization to play, and what competence level do you expect for those individuals in the organization? That's what that's all about. We ourselves have started a professional qualification called a professional safety engineer in the past couple of years or so. That's attracted enormous interest because there frankly was nothing in that space ever in the world in 2012. It was just amazing. But we have taken the initiative to do that. And I say we again, it was the community of practitioners who were skilled in this area that developed that framework. This week, or last week rather, last Thursday, we launched something called the Associate Member Process Safety Membership. We launched it in Turkey, in Antwerp, simultaneously. People were presented with that there. People were presented in Singapore, in the Singapore Awards. On Monday, there were 6 people were presented in the Malaysia Awards. This week we presented some people in Houston, and who knows what might happen tonight, right? So you know, we have actually really got this thing off to a warm start. So this is something that is of interest to people. The global awards we run, and I would love, please, this is something for you to think about. What is it that you are going to send over to the mix of the global awards in 2016 that's going to be so outstanding, that's going to represent Trinidad and Tobago? Why not? Give it a go. We now have awards or awardees from the whole world. So with what you do here, there's a real opportunity for you to participate. I've mentioned the webinars, the guy with the funny headphones on and all the rest of it. At his computer, learning from ICHEME or learning from people facilitated by ICHEME, right? That is what you get as part of a member. We touched on the gold corporate partner relationships, and I'd be very interested moving forwards to have much deeper engagement or stronger engagement with the key companies here in Trinidad. That's something we can do. That's something we're very keen to do. And top left there is a picture of the gadgets that we all carry around these days, iPads and iPhones and every other type of thing. But what we do now, of course, is deliver a lot of our materials to you through the technology. So if you're a member, I would just say, because you get it for free, download the app that is for TCE, the chemical engineer. You get it on your app, plus a whole lot of other stuff. And for those who don't have it, then there's a mechanism to do it. So these are some of the recent things. All this is in the past 18 months in ICHEME, right? Despite, on top of the international activities that we're doing. So I think plenty there for everybody to tap into as and how they wish. Next slide. So this was put together by the steering committee. This is a view as to what might be the vision for chemical engineering or chemical engineers in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't know whether that is right or wrong. I would invite you to challenge that. I would invite you to develop that and just see what can be done. Because if you can buy into the vision, and then there's a whole program of events and activities that you can actually put in behind that. But I think just reading through those, you get a sense of what things, well, maybe they could happen here, right? Okay, they should happen here. Next slide. And this is where we go next then. So this is for you to think about yourself and your contribution to chemical engineering. So in your world, whatever your micro world is, you know, what's going on in your world right now, and how does that play into chemical engineering and these vistas for chemical engineering matters, etc. What challenges do you face? Are there any skill gaps that you need help with that maybe we can contribute to? What opportunities can you see? There's some interesting conversations I had today about new technology that might be coming along. So you're going to be the people who drive all the change that's needed. So, you know, what opportunities can you see? Where do you fit in? How might ICHEME, the office, help? Right? Which is really is facilitation, but, you know, fair enough. We'll, if there's a need, we'll try and address it for the community. And what's most important to you? So all those questions I'd invite you to think about as we, or as you go forward. So that's what I wanted to say. I'll give you a flavor. You are, as a member of ICHEME in Trinidad, hugely connected, or have a huge potential to connect to this big network of chemical engineers. And you know, we're growing and expanding, and that must be for a reason. I think it's because chemical engineers recognize there is a lot that we need to do. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Neil. And before you leave the stage, Neil, I would like to invite Engineer Fazir Khan to present to you a token of our appreciation.
Thank you very much. That's great.
So lots of opportunities for us as chemical engineers. I look into the audience and I see a lot of young engineers. As a matter of fact, I think some of you probably look like you're still in your levels. So young. Maurice smiling. Who would ever believe he has 30 years experience, huh? Yeah. He used to be is it judo? Correct. So, keep calm, I'm a chemical engineer. Is chemical engineering the be-all and all? We have a very special guest in our audience, and she's going to touch a little bit on her own career and give us some insights, you know, give us some insights of what opportunities are there. You see, you may say that, you know, we have gas shortfall, we have aging plants, and perhaps you're thinking about looking at other opportunities somewhere in the world. Well, you know, the world is global. It's in the palm of your hand. Job opportunities all over. But you know, while we're here, what are we doing to really bring home that engineering capability? What are we doing to build human capacity, to continue to run our facilities, run it well, right? Process safety engineering is not something that's new. Maybe it's new to a lot of us, but certainly not something new. Our next speaker, Mrs. Tony Sergio Ramnarayan, holds the position of Vice President, Corporate Operations at Atlantic. She has a senior strategic leadership oversight of 3 functions: information and technology systems, integrated planning, and sustainability and corporate communications. Tony has been responsible for leading and promoting the company's sustainable strategy, directing the implementation of the company's sustainability portfolio and its several initiatives and partnerships. With over 20 years' experience in the oil and gas industry, starting her career in Point Lisas, Tony has held senior leadership responsibilities within the fields of engineering, business development, project development, and project management. Tony is a qualified chemical engineer from UWI and holds an MSc in International Management from King's College in London. She holds directorship in the following organizations: the Dispute Resolution Center of Trinidad and Tobago, the Loan for Enterprise and Network Development, which is a microfinancing agency in the Southwestern Peninsula, and also a structural engineering firm, KS&P Limited. She is also a member of APET and a mother of 3. I now invite Tony to give us her address.
Professor Emeritus, University of the West Indies, Mr. David Magor. Technical Director for Qualifications and International Development, ICHEME, Mr. Neil Atkinson. ICHEME Senior Ambassador and Chairman of the Trinidad and Tobago Member Group, Mr. Maurice Messiah. Members of the ICHEME Steering Committee. President-elect, Association of Professional Engineers of Trinidad and Tobago, Engineer Fazil Khan. Members of the APET Council. Specially invited guests, ICHEME members, ladies and gentlemen, good night. I've been asked to speak about my career, how I started as a chemical engineer to what I do today, and why I'm so very supportive of the establishment of this chapter of ICHEME. So let me start by thanking you for the invitation to speak at what is truly an auspicious occasion for the local chemical engineering fraternity. Today, we celebrate the spirit of community. We celebrate the formalization of a community of professionals who for many years have made an indelible mark to industry, economic growth, and national development. We recognize the importance of having a body to represent the interests of those of us who have chosen chemical engineering as a path to personal and professional development. A body that can make a difference for its members and also to create opportunities for its members to make a difference. I am therefore very pleased to be a part of this launch of the Trinidad and Tobago chapter of the Institution of Chemical Engineers and filled with hope for the future of the profession here in Trinidad and Tobago. Think big picture. The more you try to grasp, the more possibilities you have. These are not my exact words, but the words of American journalist and professor Alan Wiseman. As engineers, we understand the idea of the big picture, as we must understand the entirety of a problem in order to develop and implement a solution. In the same way, as engineers, we must also look beyond the narrow confines of the specific problems in front of us and take a broader view of our role as engineering professionals, as well as a broader view of the society and the world in which we live. I must first confess that I am no longer a practicing chemical engineer, and my present role at Atlantic is quite unrelated to chemical engineering. After spending 11 years in the field, I soon found myself in the deep end of the pool that is corporate life, in unfamiliar territory, in areas which were theoretically unrelated to my technical training. However, as a chemical engineer, I had spent the early phase of my professional career identifying and defining problems, looking at them from the inside out. I had developed an acute attention to detail to reduce the possibility of error and the consequences of such. I had worked in large, multidisciplinary teams, collaborating with persons from diverse backgrounds, with different ideas and opinions, and sometimes speaking different languages. Most importantly, I was constantly required to take a step back and look at the big picture in order to make critical decisions. These skills, developed throughout my life as an engineer, were transferable to the new responsibilities placed on me later in my professional life. a journey which continues to evolve and is always very exciting. Engineering problems, like challenges in business, are often complex and multi-layered. Therefore, what is often required to address these issues are an analytical ability, the ability to be innovative, adaptability, and a strong work ethic, all of which are part of the chemical engineer's professional toolkit. For the individual engineer, associations such as ICHEME play an integral role in supporting personal and professional development. Through ICHEME, now both young and experienced engineering professionals have greater access to the world and the unique experiences of engineers across various sectors in multiple roles in different countries. As a young engineer, I was very fortunate to have the chance to work in large companies in Houston and experienced firsthand the richness of the collaboration and knowledge sharing amongst engineering teams. This, in no small measure, influenced my personal and professional outlook as an engineer. And so I encourage you to take full advantage of the networking opportunities which come with being a member of ICHEME. This is a priceless opportunity to meet and interact with peers within Trinidad and Tobago, as well as the thousands of members across the world, which facilitates knowledge transfer and sharing of best practice, and also allows you to stay up to date with critical developments in the field and in the global environment. Allow me to speak to this last point, the importance of being cognizant of issues not only in our field, but of changes which are taking place on the global landscape. John Maxwell wrote that, quote, "Big picture thinkers realize that there is a world out there besides their own, and they make an effort to get outside of themselves and see other people's worlds through their eyes. It is hard to see the picture while inside the frame," end quote. Multi-talented engineers who understand how the world works can open many more doors to professional growth and leadership roles because of the mobility and flexibility which a broad knowledge base affords them. Engineering practice in today's world has to move beyond merely possessing the technical skills of the engineering discipline. I have already mentioned key skills such as critical thinking and problem solving in the chemical engineering toolkit, but today's engineers must also avail themselves of the broader development opportunities. ICHEME is strongly committed to ensuring members at all levels maintain an active commitment to continuing professional development in various areas relevant to the needs of 21st century chemical engineers, including communication, ethics, contract management, and talent management. And I will tell you, this is something I took full advantage of in my time as a practicing chemical engineer who was making the transition into a capital project world. I attended courses and participated in the training in the areas of project management, capital cost estimation, and contract law. These not only assisted me with building these skills, but it also introduced me to other professionals from around the world in similar fields with whom I could continue to communicate and share experiences and learnings. In order to compete with talented engineers beyond our shores, it is imperative that we shift our thinking to learn more about markets, the industry, the competitors, the socio-political challenges of our time. We must become more involved in the business context rather than be detached from it. We must develop our skills as innovators, communicators, and strategists. I relied on these skills as an engineer, and I rely on them in my job today, understanding my role in shaping strategy, bringing ideas to life, maximizing the potential of everyone in the team for the greater good of the company, and by extension for Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, big picture thinking allows us to lead, to achieve goals, and most importantly, it allows us to recognize that our contribution as professionals is part of something larger than ourselves. Engineers understand systems. So from the perspective of systems, we are an intrinsic part of a wider socio-economic system. Perhaps the most invaluable benefit of this local chapter of ICHEME is the formalization of a community of chemical engineers, with the byproduct of being powerful collaborative force in pursuit of national development. As individual engineers, you have much to gain by membership by way of becoming chartered, the networking with world-class chemical engineers, and the multitude of learning opportunities. However, as a body of chemical engineers, you now have a strong collective voice with which you can positively influence changes from the perspective of the wider society and a sustainable future for Trinidad and Tobago. Powerful factors such as globalization, advances in technology, migration of talent, and the availability of natural resources are having profound changes in our society. I believe that as a community, chemical engineers can make an important contribution to addressing some of the challenges faced today. I believe, for example, professional chemical engineers have a growing responsibility to ensure that our education and training programs for aspiring engineers are aligned to the actual needs of Trinidad and Tobago, both present and future needs. As engineers who best understand the skills and competencies which we have at present and which we need for the future, this association is best positioned to influence skills development within this field. This is increasingly important as we monitor prevailing market factors, which are currently impacting the upstream and downstream sectors of the local energy industry. We need to take a long-term view of how we prepare new engineers for the future, a future that in 10 to 20 years may be significantly different to our present, and in which the wealth of opportunity may be outside of the energy sector. In this way, we can ensure we optimize the available human resources and develop the skills which are of value to the local job market over the long term. Furthermore, together, we need to support the development of the holistic programs which tap into the creativity of our future engineers, recognizing the importance of innovation to Trinidad and Tobago remaining competitive in the global economy. By partnering with the rest of the business sector, the education sector, and APET, this local chapter of ICHEME can be powerful advocates for the future of engineers in this country. It is an opportunity for us to lend our practical and technical knowledge and expertise to help drive paradigm shifts in engineering education, research, and practice that would better address the needs of a 21st century developing nation in an increasingly dynamic global community. Moreover, through the power of many, you can now lend your voice to national issues such as safety and engineering standards, green engineering and renewable energy, greater action on carbon management, and innovation in food production and manufacturing. For many of us in this room, we are proud to be members of associations such as APET, the Association of Professional Engineers of Trinidad and Tobago. APET continues to do yeoman service as the representative body for local engineers. However, I am truly pleased that chemical engineers now have access to an international community in which we can learn from each other, strengthen our skills as engineers and leaders, and make an invaluable contribution to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I want to take this opportunity to encourage our young chemical engineers and graduates and current students to take full advantage of ICHEME's membership. There is no greater value than the support of your more experienced peers as you embark upon what should be an exciting and fulfilling career, whether it is in traditional or non-traditional chemical engineering roles. I urge you all to leverage the benefits of membership in such a prestigious professional association to not only enhance your development as chemical and process engineers, but to create those opportunities which will allow you to collaborate on addressing the bigger issues of our time. Here is your opportunity to take a step back and look at the big picture to enable you to influence positive changes within the field, changes which can serve the long-term needs of Trinidad and Tobago. I congratulate you and look forward to the success of the TT chapter of this esteemed association. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ramnarain. And I would like to invite Director of Engineering for Worley Parsons, Engineer Philip Julian, to present to Tony a token of our appreciation. Thank you again for that wonderful speech. I mean, it says everything. Critical decision making. Are we involved in that? Yes. Innovation. Yes. Multi-talented. Where the IPSL people? Multi-talented. Strategy. Where's Atlantic? Where's Worley Parsons? Strategy, right? Big picture thinking. Manager ever pull in and say, you need to think about the big picture here? Right. And I especially like developing a community of chemical engineers, which is something that we've spoken about before, and which the chemical division is certainly committed through the effort of, I want to mention, Craig Farquhar, who is somewhere in the audience, not sure where he is, and Knut Hudson, and also our past chairman of the chemical division, engineer Dr. Hayden Furlong, who has really worked hard in championing what you see here today in terms of getting a memorandum of understanding. At this stage, I'd like to take a bio break. About 8.5 minutes would work. We will return. I have about 6:45. We'll return at about 6:45, where we'll have our feature address. Okay? So, in 2006, Professor Magor joined the University of Trinidad and Tobago as Vice Provost and Professor of Process Engineering, and in 2007 to 2009 held the position of Provost. He was highly involved in program accreditation. In 1982, he coordinated ICHEME accreditation of UE program. In 1988 to 1994, he facilitated accreditation of all engineering programs. In 2008, he initiated ICHEME accreditation for UTT programs. He has about 96 published papers in journals and conference proceedings that include, you guessed it, gas and particle heat transfer, particulate drying and extraction systems, energy and environmental engineering, the role of university in engineering education and industrial development. He has also done collaborative work with a number of agencies, including the United Nations, Jamaican Bauxite Institute, and CLARICOM, to name a few. He has also served on the board of directors for a number of organizations that include the Caribbean Industrial Research Institute, Standards Bureau of Trinidad and Tobago, the Institute of Business, Carib Glassworks Limited, Carib Brewery Limited, Allston's Building Enterprises Limited, and Ansa Chemicals. I take this opportunity now to present to you, once again, Professor Emeritus, Dr. David Magor.
Thank you, Mr. Master of Ceremonies. Let me recognize Mr. Neil Atkinson. Let me also recognize Tony Serju Ramnarayan. I would also recognize Mr. Fazir Khan and honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, fellow chemical engineers. Let me say at the outset how much I appreciate the opportunity to make a presentation at this landmark event. But let me check first. I was told I'm to speak for 20 minutes. Okay, got it. We in Trinidad and Tobago, and I's a Trinidadian, you know, have a passport. Have had a long and fruitful relationship with the ICHEME, and I think it entirely appropriate that now is the time to cement that relationship and take it to a new level. It is with great pleasure I add my welcome to the ICHEME representative, Mr. Atkinson, and many of us will remember Rafaela O'Connor's inspiring address on behalf of the ICHEME a couple of years ago. I think it was at UTT, correct? Right. However, before I start, I would just like to say I am sorry that Professor Richards is not able to be with us today. I gather he's out of the country. He was the first local head of department at UWI, and as you all know very well, his career progressed to being President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. I would also remind you that he's a chemical engineer, And when president, he made a presentation to the ICHEME conference in Glasgow. I think it was about 3 years ago. Now, in this presentation, and I had some discussions with Maurice about what I was going to say, very briefly, I propose to give a very brief history of process engineering in the country, if only to demonstrate its importance to the economy and the people in our Twin Island state. I will then discuss the role and development of academia in servicing the industry, stressing the help given by the relationship with the ICHEME in that process. In completing the presentation, I will try to look ahead to see how the discipline can evolve to better serve the process industries using this new relationship. In doing so, I will give my thoughts as to the role of research and the linkages which need to be put in place through the creation of an academia, industry, professional, and government interface to focus the research into more productive conclusions. Start with the history, brief. It may be argued that the process industries started in the late 18th century with the advent of the sugar industry in both islands, producing both sugar and its major byproduct rum, with the bulk of the product being exported to UK. This continued until the early 20th century in Tobago, but the last factory was not closed down in Trinidad until a few years ago. Rum production, fortunately, continues. However, as you are very well aware, it is the oil industry which has made the greatest impact on the national economy, starting with the first crude oil production at the turn of the 20th century. In terms of processing, a small refinery started operations in Point Fortin, 1912, with the Trinidad Leaseholds refinery at Pointe-à-Pierre a few years later. I also see reference to a small refinery in La Brea at this time. The Point Fortin refinery was closed down in the 1980s, but the Pointe-à-Pierre refinery, as you know, continues to this day, having been expanded over the years. The shift to the use of natural gas started in 1959 with the building of Federation Chemicals Complex at Point Lisas and the production of ammonium sulfate and urea. This was originally to supply the sugar industry in Trinidad and around the Commonwealth Caribbean. However, with the large amounts of natural gas becoming available, the Point Lisas complex expanded significantly over the years to become the world-class site that it is today. 11 ammonia plants, urea, 7 methanol plants, etc., etc., etc. By any standards, Point Lisas is a world-class facility. And as a small island state with 1.3 million people, it is commendable that we are the largest exporters of ammonia and methanol in the world. But I would also like, of course, to mention that the groundbreaking LNG complex at Point Fortin started in 1999 and has been in operation since then, 4 trains in place. We have a rich history of process engineering and we have learned to solve our own process engineering problems. We do not often have to resort to external existence. This is because the quantum of experience that has been within the industry, and it's still there with you, is sufficient for us to sort our own problems out. Of note is the fact that the Braun ammonia plant was built in 1966, and it's still working. 50 years almost. I know, I drive past it once a month. Now, whereas it is clear that the processing of natural gas and crude oil form the backbone of the process industries in Trinidad, there are many other examples of process engineering activities at different levels. Carib Brewery started in 1950s, together with its sister company, Carib Glass. In addition, there are a number of other processing facilities in the areas of paints, chlor-alkali, building products, plastics processing, food processing, etc. And of course, cement started in 1954, with the processing capabilities increasing significantly over the years. In the development of the process industries, there have been many innovations. I'll just mention the fact that the transfer of raw materials in slurry form from the Mayo Quarry to the cement factory at Claxton Bay by pipeline was the first time that this had been done worldwide, way back in 1950s. I think also the reverse osmosis plant, which we put in around about 1999, was the biggest in the world at the time. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now, in terms of education and training of engineers for the industry, it was appropriate that the Faculty of Engineering at UWI started in 1960, just at the time of the expansion of the process industry sector in Trinidad. The Department of Chemical Engineering at UWI was fortunate to be able to utilize UNESCO funding to have an eminent British chemical engineer, Bill Norman, to get the program off the ground and on the right track. Bill enjoyed his 3 years in Trinidad. He came as a bachelor and left with a wife, Trinidadian, of course. He came back some years later to help set up the petroleum engineering program as well. However, in order to ensure that global standards were applied to the teaching program at UWI, an external examiner system was applied from the beginning, utilizing eminent academics, usually from UK. For instance, I recall even myself, Frank Morton, as an external examiner. And Frank Morton was no stranger to Trinidad, having worked on the Pointe-à-Pitre refinery during the Second World War. It is my understanding that I came in 1967, but it's my understanding that we had a relationship with the ICHEME from the beginning of the program. That would have been through Bill Norman. And our program being what I would call recognized in those days. These were the days before accreditation. Once the concept of accreditation was initiated in the early 1980s, we decided that it was important for us, and particularly for our graduates, that the program be accredited. At the time, our external examiner was none other than Jack Richardson. And people remember Coulson and Richardson as textbook, right? Jack was our external in those days, and he was very helpful in our successful application. The UWI accreditation has been retained to this day, and I would like to say, publicly recognize, that the accreditation process has been invaluable in upgrading the program on a regular basis to ensure global standards. There probably have been in excess of 1,000 graduates to date since inception of the program, most of whom have served or are still serving the industry today, with a number at CEO level. UTT. UTT, the University of Trinidad and Tobago, was created in 2004, merging the Trinidad and Tobago Institute of Technology with a number of other existing institutions, in the case of engineering disciplines, the technical colleges. It operates on a very different concept to UWI in that, whereas UWI student input is mainly from the school system at advanced level, UTT has a hierarchical structure where students can study the technician's diploma first, and then if they wish and are deemed to be capable, move up to the BSc program afterwards. Since the diploma program requires industrial placements, this means that the students tend to enter UTT undergraduate program with some industrial knowledge and experience. Now, I had visited the ICHEME office, Railway Terrace, even the London office, is there still a London office? Yeah, right, even the London office a few times on behalf of UWI accreditations. But in 2009, I actually visited Railway Terrace on behalf of UTT. Until that visit, I was not aware that the ICHEME accredited diploma programs, but it is now my understanding that the programs are now fully accredited at all three levels, diploma, BEng, and MEng, correct? Right. And I am advised that there have been upwards of around 200 BEng, MEng graduates to date from UTT. Now, both institutions use industry advisory committees to provide guidance to the academics and to help with student industrial placements. And there will be a number of you here today who actually serve on these advisory committees. They are important. It may be concluded that with the ICHEME accreditation, the external examiner system, and the industry advisory committees, the teaching programs should be providing industry with the right kind of graduates. This feedback and adjustment, where necessary, must continue. But let me move on to research. Right? This is the most difficult of the topics. Universities must be carrying out research. It is my view that in the developing country situation in which we live, and bearing in mind the dependency on the public purse, all research should be geared towards national, regional development. The problem, certainly through UWI, has been that there's little research money available, and engineering research requires funding for equipment, services, chemicals, human support, etc. In addition, it was often difficult to attract postgraduate students who basically considered that a PhD was unlikely to advance their career prospects in the local process industry. Nonetheless, UWI has contributed with its limited resources in research in the areas of sugar technology and bioengineering, gas processing, and in the area of natural products. And a number of MPhils and PhDs have been awarded over the years. UTT concentrated their initial research within the Natural Gas Institute of the Americas under Hayden Furlong's guidance, and with the help of University of Texas, right? This has resulted also in PhD awards. And whereas I said that the perception was that students didn't want to do PhDs because they didn't think it would help them, I think that all the PhD students who have graduated have done well for themselves, and done well for themselves in industry and in academia. And I can recognize at least two students that I had the pleasure to work with during the course of their research projects right here, and they're doing well. Notwithstanding this research, I do not believe that the influence on national and regional development has been as it might have been. When I look at the UWI work on extraction of high-value products from plant materials using supercritical extraction and steam distillation, for instance, some help has been given to producers in the country and also up the Windward Islands. But no new plants have been built. We carried out a techno-economic feasibility study for TIDCO when Caroni lands became available on the shutdown of the sugar industry. This study showed that the utilization of 200 hectares could give a viable business. There were issues which needed to be addressed, but more particularly on the agriculture side. The extraction technology, straightforward. We had that in hand. There was no follow-up, however, and this highlights a major weakness in the ability to commercialize research results. First, there's a need, if you're in that area, for agricultural specialists to help you. And second is the need to finance to carry out any follow-up work you need, and subsequently to find the investment backers. Right? I'll come back to this in a minute. So the mechanism for commercialization of research is not satisfactory. I would also make reference to the Unibio gas-to-protein project with the pilot plant at UTT. This plant has produced protein a couple of years ago, but I'm not aware of any progress towards commercialization since that time. Beautiful project producing protein from gas. Not all research is done at the universities. CARIRI, Caribbean Industrial Research Institute, was created in 1970, has carried out R&D work both for country and the Eastern Caribbean. But its main work has been in the provision of technical services, albeit to support manufacturing enterprises. Over the years, CARIRI has worked closely with the Department of Chemical Engineering at UWI, one example being the development of a plant to produce a sorrel concentrate using a process developed by Professor Sami. My recollection is that that plant was eventually operated commercially as a farmers' cooperative. Another example was the design of a plant to produce essential oils from a plantation in Tobago. CARIRI worked with UWI to study the scale-up from laboratory, pilot plant to commercial size. Having said that, CARIRI has helped many entrepreneurs, but basically operating in the SME sector, and it now operates a business incubator where entrepreneurs can wet their feet. So where do we go from here? What are we going to do? In Trinidad and Tobago right now, we are moving into troubled waters. This being as a result of oil and gas prices, but also because of restricted production in the short to medium term. The teaching programs will, of course, continue and evolve with changing global trends in educational practice and in content. This in particular is where our ties with the ICHEME are paramount, not just through the accreditation process, but also through the contacts that can be made with other global universities and institutions, as Mr. Atkinson described earlier. However, in my view, the area of continuing professional development has not been adequately addressed to date nationally. ICHEME is strong, you mentioned it, stressed it, is strong in this area, and if arrangements can be made for application of distance learning techniques or through the audiovisual process, we must capitalize on this opportunity. You mentioned the webinars. And we must capitalize on these opportunities. If there are courses which are to be coordinated locally, but using ICHEME content, they can be coordinated either through the Engineering Institute at UWI or the Professional Development Unit at UTT. However, in my opinion, the major issue which needs addressing is focusing research towards development. To date, the research agendas of the universities has been fragmented without a common focus. CARIRI has been successful in helping entrepreneurs, but its main role has been in the provision of technical services. There is a need to focus the research agendas, but in addition, there's the need to understand the complete path to commercialization and to put the necessary mechanisms in place. In order to focus this research, we need to initially determine national priorities. Successive governments have, over the many years, talked about diversification. They're still doing. Diversification of the economy. But what's happened, right? in my view, we should bring together all of the interested parties, the universities, Kariri, Professional Association, Manufacturers Association, NEC, NGC, private industry representatives, and relevant ministries. And the ministries I mean are not just energy, but industry and trade and agriculture, where your research is associated with producing sustainable materials from crops. A working group, dare I say it, a think tank, should be formed, possibly organizing a national consultation in order to identify promising areas potentially suitable for commercialization. Set up a priority listing, then detail the research necessary to fill the technical gaps towards making a decision in these areas. A decision where to carry out the research will be based on institutional capability, but funding would have to be identified. This could include the possibility of 2 or more institutions working together, as appropriate to the situation. And I can tell you that when we needed sufficient plant material for a PhD project at UWI a few years ago, we were using a small pilot plant steam distillation unit. We got our plant material from UTT, from the field station at Waterloo. It can happen. This should also be incorporated into the working group deliberations, but there are other issues which you have to understand and work on too. Intellectual property protection, the need to market the product, as well as financing and ownership issues, which would need to have to be recognized and inserted into the total equation. So what are the potential areas which may be exploited? In terms of process engineering research, before we begin to talk about new plants and processes, we need to recognize that health and safety is key to everything you do on your plant. Research, there's an avenue for research there. Environmental protection. And there could be the in-depth studies of areas of existing plants. My own PhD I brought from industry. I brought the problem from industry. Now, in the case of environmental protection, we are named as a major carbon dioxide producer per capita, partly, of course, because of the number of ammonia plants. I know that UTT has studied the problem, but I'm not familiar with the status of the mitigation measures proposed, and there may well be further work in that area. Perhaps just to be facetious, an obvious answer is build some more urea plants. That uses up carbon dioxide. But of course, that's a commercial decision. And it's and expensive, right? Speaking generally, of course, waste utilization is a big area. I should also observe that we have a large number of catalytic reactors at Point Leazes and on the refinery. Can we install catalyst facilities at a university which may be used to study local problems? We've tried to get into this at UWI over the years. Funding was always the problem. In identifying new process opportunities, process plant requires raw materials. I know downstreaming of Point Leazes intermediates has been well studied, and I believe that presentations have been made on further processing of melamine at SME level. But what other raw materials can be made available? I was drawn to an article in a recent issue of the Chemical Engineering by Helen Tunnicliffe, where she asked whether renewable chemical feedstocks will ever take the place of petrochemicals. She suggested that they needed 14 million hectares of land in UK to produce enough biofuel, which that's a fair proportion of the country's land area. Now, UWI did look into regional potential for production of ethanol way back in the 70s when sugar was strong and presented the case at West Indies Sugar Association conferences. Furthermore, we advised that ethanol itself could be a feedstock for renewable products, polyethylene to begin with. So it's no problem producing polyethylene from a renewable resource. Of course, it's the cost which it makes it uneconomic. We, of course, in Trinidad don't have enough land for such an enterprise, but I do believe we could utilize the land to produce, and I'm coming back to something I said before, crops from which high-value chemicals can be extracted, perfumes, natural pharmaceuticals, personal care products. We have the technology, we need the agriculture input. And this is just one example outside food production where the land could provide a sustainable supply of raw material for processing. Now, in conclusion, you'll be happy to hear that. I'm not used to reading, I'm used to wandering around, as some of you will know. And endeavoring to focus our research, we need to recognize that we are an integral part of a global community. We need to understand what is going on worldwide. We need to ensure that global developments influence our thinking and our decision-making. And this is where the connection with the ICHEME is of prime importance. Yeah, I don't have to tell you, the ICHEME is global, you heard it. Let me add another thing, in that the ICHEME has just initiated an energy center. Could we get involved in the energy center, which I believe is focusing worldwide? The connection can provide, with the ICHEME, can provide us with information, contacts, which could benefit the development of our process engineering sector. In conclusion, I look forward to the increasing collaboration in many areas which will be available after the formation of the Trinidad and Tobago Members Group, and I thank you for your forbearance.
Thank you very much, Professor Emeritus Dr. Mago. Remind me of class back at UE. Some of us were actually very afraid of you, but the first time, and yeah, you probably don't look too much older. I would like to invite to present a token of our appreciation the program leader for the Bachelor of Education at UTT, Dr. Vashti Singh, to present a token of appreciation to Professor Emeritus Dr. Mago. And please don't leave us yet. We have something else for you. We would like to recognize your contribution to the development of chemical engineering in Trinidad and Tobago. And I want to invite Engineer Neil Atkinson to present the award of being the TTMG, Trinidad and Tobago Member Group, first, and some of them says it's a senior fellow. So, in recognition of meritorious service in the development of chemical engineering in Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you once again, Professor. I particularly liked solving our own engineering problems. Particularly like that because in my experience so far, I'm not that old, and I've been in Point Lisas for a while, and also at Atlantic, and also at Caribbean. I have seen a lot of really bright engineering professionals who really dig deep in times of crisis. And I want to congratulate you for that. You know, because when we start trusting that we can do a good job and start believing in ourselves, that we can, as Professor Mago said, and we have done so, and he cited many examples. That's a good thing for this country. It's about keeping that tacit knowledge that we've gotten all over the years and keeping it and preserving it here. Petrotrin wasn't commissioned last week, was it? And we lost a lot of professionals to that industry, going all over the world to commission plants. Even those people, those persons who worked at Point Lisas and designed companies like the Wally Parsons, the Foster Wheeler, right, the PPGPL, the cement. We have a refractory expert among us. It shows that we really can do good work. The Atlantic LNG, we've actually exported talent to Africa, to Asia, to the Middle East, right? So it really shows that we can do good. We can do good work. We can depend on ourselves. We can reduce that dependency for foreign consultancy. We can do it. And so I urge you, on a backdrop of what Professor Mago is saying, he's telling us that we really have the talent here. So continue to believe in yourselves. Continue to share good work. Join ICHEME. Join APET. Come down and support us. On the 27th of November, we're going to have a lecture, a seminar on corrosion under insulation. It's a big topic in the industry, especially for aging facilities. And we're going to have an expert of more than 40 years' experience, and you all probably have heard of him. It's Mr. Kiriti Bhattacharya, who has a wealth of experience in the subject area. And you will see some information coming further on that. We would now like to present, and Engineer Neil Atkinson had mentioned it, where he gave award for process safety engineering. And like I said before, this is not something new to us. Process safety engineering is about keeping our hydrocarbons in our pipe. Simple. Don't let it go. Don't let it escape in the atmosphere. Don't let it create a flammable mixture. And so we'd like to present a Young Process Safety Award to a young professional. And I'm just going to read a little bit about her. But before I do so, let me just tell you how the award was created. We had a set of criteria. The judging committee comprised members of the steering committee, led by engineer Chris Farquhar. I made an error before. I said Craig, but it's engineer Chris Farquhar. He's somewhere. Right. And it was given to a young professional. The qualification was less than 35 years of age, so 35 is not old. Not yet chartered. Working in process safety role with the intention of becoming a safety professional. Has the potential in a 3 to 5 year time frame to hold a technical safety role, and who by training would have been a chemical engineer with process safety master's degree to be considered as well, right? So the award went to a young engineer, and let me give you a little bit of bio. This engineer completed a BSc degree in chemical engineering from MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, in 2008. In 2009, she spent 9 months at the French Institute of Petroleum in Thermodynamic and Molecular Simulation Department. In 2010, she joined Atlantic Graduate Training Program in the Process Engineering Department, and 2 years later, in 2013, took up the opportunity to develop her career in process safety engineering in Atlantic's Operations Excellence Department. Some of her responsibilities included project lead for Management of Change Improvement Initiative, developing and embedding facility-wide leak management programs and awareness, generating consequence models for facility releases to determine actual and projected associated risks, supporting company-wide process safety awareness initiatives, and participation in flare risk HAZOP and LOPA workshops, and she participated by being a scribe. You know, I remember when I joined IPSL and Roger Bissessa was there, first thing that they threw in was a HAZOP. And what a way to learn the facility when you start a HAZOP, because you get to learn every single thing about the plant. Whether or not it will come in such a short time is irrelevant, but it really exposes you. And being a scribe allows you to connect with the industrial jargons, right? So this engineer, I would like to now invite on the stage young Michelle Aking. I would like to invite Maurice Masaya to present this award. And I would like to encourage you. Maurice indicated that this is going to be an annual thing, and we want to hold him to that. So we are encouraging you all that next time around, you'll get notification. Please put forward your engineers, put forward the good work that they do. Let's hear it. And as a matter of fact, I also want to make a vouch here for the chemical engineering newsletter. And we would appreciate, articles coming from you. The ones that are not, that you can share, because I know you have a lot of proprietary information that vendors don't like you to put out. But the ones that you can get it published in the chemical engineering newsletter. We now come to a very important part of this program, and this is the signing of the MOU. And I would like to invite Engineer Fazir Khan, Engineer Neil Atkinson, and Engineer Dr. Hayden Furlong to sign this Memorandum of Understanding.
Neil. Yeah, Neil will sign this. Yes, yes, yes.
Sure.
Hi. Right, so you're signing here and the other copy.
Thank you.
So, where am I signing? Yeah.
Yeah. Let's have a picture over here, Maurice.
Let me call him up.
Yeah, wait, he's coming.
Where are you taking it?
Yes. You sign. Hello.
I sign.
Just switch your pen off. Yeah?
For a second. Oh, I'm busy signing. I have a very large bank account, as you can tell. Yeah, Maurice, please, yeah, absolutely. Very good.
Yes, we'll do the four over there. We'll do the
Okay.
four over there.
You want to take this as well?
No, leave it there. I'll take this one. Plenty. Some stuff. I'll work with this. Just in case, I guess.
Indeed, this is a historic occasion for us engineers in Trinidad and Tobago. And let's hear it. Round of applause. I would also like to invite on stage Trevor James and Dr. Marian Watson as I present to you the ICHEME Steering Committee. So you all will know who they are. So on my far left, Dr. Hayden Furlong, right, followed by Mr. Neil Atkinson, Maurice Messiah, Dr. Watson, Trevor James, and myself. I would like Maurice to stay on stage as we have reached the most important part of the program. Closing remarks, right? So he's no stranger to the stage. I invite now Maurice Messiah to give his vote of thanks and closing remarks. Maurice.
Thank you very much, Imtiaz. Well, there you have it. We have signed the Memorandum of Understanding, finally. Let's have a big round of applause for that. Yeah. And so I'm pleased to see that we actually got to that stage and actually signed it off. Now it's official. We have got tremendous support from APET, and I want to say thanks to them as well, too. So there you have it. Clearly, being a member of the TTMG, there's lots of benefits. So please do sign up if you're not yet a member. So I was pleased to hear Fazir Khan talk about the continued pledge between APET and ICHEME as we go along. And certainly Neil Atkinson talking about how the institution certainly continues to grow and impacts the quality of life, which I thought was really important. I was very impressed with Tony Sergio Ramnarayan in terms of, so she demonstrated how diverse chemical engineers can become. And I like the focus on the big picture thinking and being cognizant of what's happening outside of your domain and sort of becoming interested in business as well. In terms of chemical engineers, we can focus on the really fine things, you know. My daughter always tells me that, you know, I focus on the trees and I miss the forest. So just some advice there, really good. Thank you very much for that. So I was particularly motivated and concerned by Professor Emeritus Mogoa, his statements and his insightful speech. So motivated, certainly when I heard like Imtiaz, that we have learned to solve our own problems and all the advancements we have made in terms of process engineering and chemical engineering in terms of at the tertiary level education, and also within the process industry itself. Concerned when you talked about where we are in terms of research and the gaps that we are experiencing there. And so it's for us to look inside internally and to see how can we as the TTMG, working along with APET, UTT, UE, and all the other agencies you spoke about, how can we now come together to ensure that, we are doing something to improve the quality of life here in Trinidad and Tobago as well. So we are also impacted by the effects of low oil and gas prices and production as well. It's a reality that we all face. So, but the point being, there are many opportunities for growth in the profession, but, I'm throwing it out again to you. We need your support as we go forward with building this Trinidad and Tobago member group. So we are also having, I mentioned on the 27th, that event in terms of building our calendar for 2016, 2017, and we need you there. So we'll be reaching out to you shortly with the details and invitations via our website and email notes. So please do not delete our email notes. We do not send out junk mail, right? So I'd like to move on now and to move to the vote of thanks, to saying, thank you to all who have assisted. So I'd like to thank our speakers, Professor Emeritus David Magor, Carolyn Tony Sergio Ramnarain, Neil Atkinson, Fazir Khan. Special thanks to the UGT and ICHEME and APET as well. And I wish to thank our sponsors for their generosity, and that is Willie Parsons, Atlantic, BPTT. We have also gotten support from BK Enterprises and New York Garments as well. And my list of thanks also extends to superb caterers who has all that delicious food outside. And actually the Newsday newspapers. So they have been very supportive in terms of carrying our advertisement. So I'd be remiss if I didn't make special mention of the steering committee and the planning committee. I would like to express my deep gratitude to all the members. So I cannot mention all the names. We need to get out of here soon. But need to highlight at least the following persons. So Dr. Marian Watson, thank you. Laura Lewis, she's in the audience, not seeing Laura. Sulana Chunilal, Emily Cardenas George, Angelique Philip Harris, our energetic events coordinator, Leslie Ann Beckles, is at the back of the room, and by no means least, our student volunteers. So, so in closing, I declare the ICHEME Trinidad and Tobago member group officially launched. Round of applause. Thank you very much for being a great audience.
Thank you.
Just couldn't help noticing that Maurice acknowledged all the females, right? But no, it was really a tremendous effort by all of them. And I mean, just, like Emily and Sulana, they work in shift during the shutdowns, and Leslie sent emails all 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and so on, right? The most important part now, I would like to invite you all to the cocktail reception. I was told that we have mini chicken roti. I can't miss out on that one. But we like to do it in an orderly fashion. We like the front row to go first, followed by the other rows, and we like the ushers to please help us with that. So thank you all for your attention. You have been really, really an attentive audience.